Tina?
Good evening. Welcome to the Monomoy Regional School Committee. Today is Thursday, October 8th, and we're starting our meeting at 6:34. And just a reminder that this meeting is being held partially remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts, March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A, Section 20. And in order to call to order, because we're partially remote, I can't see anybody, but, oh, thank you. So we're going to start in the room. We will go around and say our name and say present. I'll start. Tina Games, present.
Joanne Sheen, present.
Nancy Scott, present.
And in our Zoom room, I believe we have Joe and Sharon. If you could just state your name and present. Great, thank you. And Sharon? Is Sharon in the? Thank you, Sharon. All right, wonderful. So I'm calling the meeting to order, and the first item of business is approval of minutes from our September 24th meeting.
So moved.
All right, so Nancy has moved that we approve the minutes. May I have a second?
Second.
And Jackie has seconded, so we're going to do a roll call vote. We'll start in the Zoom room. There you are, yay. We'll start in the Zoom room. Joe? All right, Sharon? Thank you. Jackie? Aye. Nancy?
Aye.
Joanne? Sustain. Oh, that's right, sustain. And then I'm an aye. So it does pass. And we're going to move on to public comment. Do we have anyone in the public who would like to speak this evening? Anyone in? All right, are we good? Anybody in the Zoom room? Okay. Seeing none, we're going to move on to recognitions. Dr. Carpenter.
I have just a couple. First, we would like to thank St. Peter's Lutheran Church for their generous donation in the amount of $500 to be used towards the purchase of PPE for students in the district. Then we would like to thank Bob and Marcia Harris for their donation to the middle school band program of a drum kit that includes chimes, tambourine mount, a cowbell mount, pearl pedal, Ludwig snare and stand, a stool, sticks, mallets, and books, and several drum pads. So thank you for your support. And then on a more somber note, I would like to thank and acknowledge the passing of Paul Funk. Paul was a member of our Harwich community, but he was also on the school building committee that that brought Monomoy Regional High School to be. Paul was a former business manager, I always said partly retired, and was working part-time as the business manager in Mashpee up until this past summer. But Paul was a great educator over the years, and he provided great service to students across the Cape and the state of Massachusetts, and definitely to to our school district. My heart goes out to to Paul's family, and I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge his passing.
Thank you, Dr. Carpenter. And school committee members, in your packet, there is the obituary. It should be toward the back. And we absolutely want to just take a quick moment of silence for Paul, because he definitely contributed a lot to our school district. Okay, thank you. Now we're going to move into the next item of business under Section E, Reports and Discussions. The CVAC Annual Report, FY20. This is the Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative, Incorporated. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you. Can you work the magic, Leah?
Give it my best shot.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and start. I am Liz Argo. I am the Executive Director of the Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative. And with me today, I have our Deputy Director, Maria Marasco. Maria, say hi to everybody. We would also like to acknowledge we have a new president for the organization. Leo Kukunis is very busy picking cranberries right now, so he's stepped down from his role. And we have the representative from Aquina stepping in, whose name is William Lake. He is a lawyer retired from owning his own firm in Washington, so that should be a big asset for us. Sorry. No problem. Let's sing again. Fly me to the moon. Where's Joe when you need him? So most of you know who we are. The next slide basically tells you that we are an energy cooperative. We've been formed since 2007. We were formed by the Cape Light Compact, and we have a special legislation to be an energy cooperative, nonprofit energy cooperative. Thank you. We started with 3 initial members, Cape Light Compact, Barnstable County, and the town of Barnstable, and now we've grown to have 24 members, and I'm really proud to note that we have members coming on from off Cape, and the island of Nantucket has now joined with CVAC, Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative. Most of you know our mission is power sales, bringing forward renewable energy through net metering credit benefits, and we're now looking into participating in the ISO New England market with some of our battery and battery resilience projects. And Maria heads up our electric vehicle initiative, so we're bringing EV cars and stations forward. So if she hasn't reached out to somebody here to see about bringing your fleet over to electric vehicles, she will be. So this just gives you a snapshot of the way our membership has grown. And of course, schools are not members, they are participants. So you'll see though that you have a place on our roll call here, as well as Dennis Yarmouth School District, and on the left-hand corner you see Nauset School District is now also participating. We go forward with initiatives. That's how we bring forward our renewables. Round 1 was on landfills. Round 2 was a lot of buildings and a lot of projects at DY Regional School District. Round 3 was just some roof installations, Yarmouth Fire Station up in the right-hand corner being an example. And round 4 is our 12 megawatts, another rather large request for proposals with something like 17 projects. And in the right-hand corner, that's your installation on the roof of the Monomoy High School. So it is physically there. The electric work remains to be done, but that electric work is scheduled for the next few weeks. And so that will be very exciting when that comes online. Round 5 is another 14 megawatts with, for instance, Oak Bluffs Elementary School is participating in that one. And round 6, we are collecting projects. So if there's any reason you want to, for instance, expand the solar on the Monomoy High School, just let us know. We hope in 2023 to have a portfolio that's about 54 megawatts, which is a astounding amount of renewables. And for the towns and counties off Cape, they are looking at CVAC and what you have brought forward through CVAC with a lot of envy, because having a cooperative and working together has brought more renewables forward per area here on the Cape and Martha's Vineyard than in the rest of Massachusetts. We've done a great job. Maybe one of the most important features is we're saving you money. So at the end of FY20, which for us is July, like you, end of June, we had saved our participants over almost $17 million. We are saving now our participants about $3 million a year. And of course, we always forget, because we're so focused on saving money, that's a huge reduction in greenhouse gases, which may actually, for some of us, be even more important. As I mentioned, we're doing charging stations, and then we haven't talked much about our net metering credit sales, but the Monomoy School District is a very big participant in the net metering credit sales programs. You buy a lot of net metering credits, That has been the bulk of your savings. And one of the big projects that you buy from is a wind project that is located off Cape. So the big news, you're up on the top of the list. Monomoy High School roof-mounted PV is installed, awaits electrical work. We are installing a battery at DY High School's emergency shelter under a grant that we got from the state. As I mentioned, we're collecting projects to do yet another round of installations. And this is the big news. We are not here to ask you for money this year. So, surprise. We're getting a lot of applause as we go around to all the towns right now. We looked at our balance sheet and we realized we could get by without having to ask you once again to extend the round one adder. So thank you for all the support that you have given. Of course, I want you to get out your magnifying glasses for this one. I mentioned that Monomoy School District is largely an off-taker. There's a list of the projects from which you take net metering credits. They include Harwich Landfill, Tisbury Landfill, West Tisbury Cap Landfill, and Barnstable Fire District, Nunnymog projects, and then the projects off Cape, which is the wind project as well as a project called Nexamp. And even I am having a hard time reading it over here. You guys have the big one. Why don't you tell me on this sheet?
62,
Thank you.
862.
$62,862. There, we got it. So that's what Monomoy School District has saved in FY20. And that's only going to go up as the projects continue to go in. This does, of course, not include Monomoy High School, but let's go to that. The annual savings that are projected, and if you care to look at the pro forma, you would have to go over to the sheet that other people have here, because that's too small for anybody at home to read. But ultimately, the total annual savings from the project that's now on the roof of Monomoy High School is $43,167. And over the course of 20 years, we're looking at a savings that's, I believe that's a 3. Over $3 million? No, it's a 1. $1 million. Thank you. I'll have to print these out bigger for me, too, next time. So with that, I am closing, and if you have questions, please give them to me.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Liz? Comments? Anybody in the Zoom room, Joe or Sharon? All right, hearing none, we are good.
Thank you.
Thank you
I
very
do
much.
appreciate being able to come back every year and get you caught up, and you have been a great partner and very big supporter of CVEC, so I'm glad that we're now able to reward you with some green, both in greenbacks and with renewable energy.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. Good to meet you. Thank you. Oh, yes.
Can we take one moment just to reset our audio? It sounds like there's some sort of technical issue.
Okay. Thank you. So everybody, we're just going to take a pause. We have to reset our audio. So if we can just take Millen.
All right, good evening, everybody. My head's spinning a little bit because we've kind of only just finished FY20. We're still only just set the FY21 budget. And I looked at my school committee calendar a week ago and saw we had to start talking about the FY22 budget.
Yes.
So this is really just to outline where we're going and just give us some food for thought as we go through the next couple of months. The budget calendar really mirrors the budget calendar that's been for the last few years. We obviously have some big ticket items, so we've got to get the budget to the towns in January, and we have our presentation and our town meetings, and that will happen in the spring. And before then, we've got some discussions with Chatham and Harwich just to find out, get the lay of the land, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. We've just about to start the process of working with the principals and the directors for them to develop their individual building and directory budgets, which we will then pull together and develop our overarching budget. And we should have the first draft of the budget to you just almost halfway through December. But, does anybody have any questions or concerns about that process?
Any questions, concerns? Anybody in the Zoom room? Questions, concerns? All right, I think we're good.
All right. It's fairly straightforward, and it tends to be organic, so we'll have extra meetings thrown in here when we need to, and we'll move it along as we have to. And then since I had the opportunity to stand up here in front of you, I thought we'd use this just to sort of outline kind of some of our guiding principles, and then just give you some food for thought in the things that are going to influence the budget as we start this process. But these are just kind of budget development principles. These aren't really budget principles because these haven't been set by you. These are just like, as Scott and I were chatting about, the kind of things that are going to influence our process. So we want it to tie in to the strategic plan. So any decisions, particularly about priorities for funding, should be driven by the strategic plan. We have the long-standing class size guidelines, which we will plan to adhere to. And hopefully, and both of those things tie into the budget and the decisions around the budget being data-driven. So as far as possible, we're looking at data to support decisions around how to use our resources most effectively. And we also want this budget process to be transparent. So we want, you as a school committee, but also our member communities, our families, people that live and work in Monomoy to understand the decisions we're making around the budget and why we make the decisions we do. And that's why we hope for this process to be collaborative. And also, and I think that we're realistic about the budget, and it recognises the financial environment that both towns are operating in right now, particularly this year when we have the outlook that we do due to everything that's happened in the last few months. So some of the things I think are probably going to be the hot topics going into this year. I think clearly the financial outlook, both for the state and for local funding, it's right now there's not a lot of clarity of what FY22 budgets are going to look like. And we have some concerns of the amount of money people have had to spend and the impact on businesses of COVID. So that's definitely going to influence all of our decisions. And then the COVID response, so what kind of budget are we developing? Are we still going to be in a COVID world in FY22? How will that impact the budget? How many scenarios do we have to plan for as we build the budget? And then the next few things are not COVID related, but issues which have, underpinned a lot of the budget decisions for the last few years. Where are enrollments going? We have a number of employment contracts up for renewal, not least teachers. The capital plan we continue to develop to maintain it. As we've seen through this whole process, investing in maintenance and improvement of your capital is so important when times get difficult, so we need to keep that going. We're looking at our long-term financial stability, and that was something we kind of talked about a little bit with the budget discussions in the last month or so, but looking at what our excess and deficiency balances and also our stabilization. And then just because, I love doing charts, I threw into some information to provide some context. So I have updated these a little bit, and I'll send out this new version. It's slightly different from the ones in your packs, but only a tiny bit because one of these numbers was wrong. But you know, you can see that we've had in recent, I won't go through all these in detail because there's a lot of information and you're probably already bored. But you can see, you know, we had reasonable increases, but it has started to level off in the last few years. This is our overall budget. And within this, our operating and transportation budgets, again, we had seen more increases a few years ago, and that has started to level off, particularly last year. Debt and capital, so capital is obviously something we have control over, but the debt has really been, you know, the result of this building we're standing in, the project around that, and that's coming down and should continue to do so. This is just how our budget is, or how we fund our budget. And Chapter 70 has grown as a proportion of the funding of our budget, and as has excess and deficiency in the last couple of years. And then this is how the Chapter 70 funding and also charter school funding, so that's money we receive back for charter school expenses, have gone down. Well, the charter school's gone down significantly, and Chapter 70 has gone up. I should say that these are the budget figures, so the budget figures. So these are the numbers we have when we're setting the budget, and often they'll be different from the actual figures we get once the state budget's finalised. But, you know, so there's sometimes a little catch, we need to catch up. Not this year though, because for 21, we set the budget so late, we knew what the state was doing by that point. So excess and deficiency has varied a lot, which makes sense depending on what's happened in the previous year and the needs of the district. And although, as you can see, there is generally an upward trend. And in the assessments, so a lot of this information you will be familiar with. I'm just going to hide these guys for a sec. Finish Chatham assessment. And then, so then some non-financial information, which I think is pertinent. You know, enrollment is something we've talked about a lot, and we probably will continue to do so. We have seen a slight reduction. I mean, it's not as much as you might think from all the conversation that goes on, but our enrollment has reduced a little. And we have seen, you know, we've talked about, and the superintendent has updated you on, you know, the numbers we're seeing in kindergarten this year, and also the number of homeschool students. And, you know, obviously the big question for us is whether or not, whatever happens with COVID next year, do we see those students coming back into the district? And is that something we need to prepare for? You know, how do we make budget decisions when there's that big unknown around enrollment figures? And in staffing, I mean, just to show, so although we had been increasing up until 2019, in the last couple of years, we have seen the staffing numbers start to have come down a little bit. And that is driven largely by, I mean, there's kind of small changes all over, but a lot of the paraprofessionals, the instructional aid changes, which do tend to fluctuate with the needs of the students. We have seen them reduce slightly as well. These figures are also, just so you're aware of where the numbers come from, we have to do a report to the state in October every year of all our staffing. Well, actually not quite all our staffing. It doesn't include custodial and food services, so I've added those in. But it's quite nice because it's not perfect, but it gives us a moment in time that's consistent, relatively consistent, going back a long time, like many years, so it's a useful trend to review. And that's it. So those, I guess, I mean, you know, thinking about enrollment and staffing, the impact of that, and obviously the financial outlook, I think are going to be big issues.
Thank you. Any questions, comments for Michael? Anybody? Anybody in the Zoom room, Sharon or Joe? Any questions regarding Michael's presentation?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
And so, Michael, since you're new here, I'm not sure that personally you know, but just by looking at the data sheets like you were looking at them, the difference in our budgeting this year, or our expenditures,
Yeah.
went down. Do you feel like this is very influenced by COVID, that we've got a lot of kids at home? I'm trying to get a sense of it, and
Uh, So do
Okay,
you mean,
and Michael, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Sharon, could you turn your camera on, please, just so that you're visible? And then Michael can... Okay. All right. All right, so we'll work on that. If you could also work, and Michael's going to answer your question. Go ahead.
so,
There you go.
so I'm just checking, so I think, do you mean like, how did we have such small increases in our assessments without reducing our programs and staffing? I think, so there's, there's definitely, so it is really interesting because I did have a couple of moments when we were going into the Harwich Town Board of Selectmen meeting, and I was like, how can this be right? How can these numbers add up? Because, you know, we're having a relatively small increase in our assessments, but our overall budget, we weren't having to, you know, why are we not having to make cuts? Like, how are we living within this? And there was a few different things that happened that helped with that. One is Chapter 70 did go up, and normally, like I said earlier, we're doing the Chapter 70 based on what we think it's going to be. We actually had the number already, so knowing what the number was meant that we had more, we were more confident in that number, and that did show an increase from what we budgeted last year, not what it actually was last year. It's the same as it actually was, but it's an increase on the budget. So that was an increase in Chapter 70. Obviously, there was a big increase in our excess and deficiency, which also offset those the assessment reductions. And also, debt was down, and so that helped. So overall budget, although the overall budget didn't go up, because debt went down, that meant it wasn't such a reduction required for operating. So there's probably a few more things like that going on, but it's that sort of thing.
But that's very helpful. It really does show to me that because of being conservative with all of our fiscal planning and having the deficiency, the same
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think looking forward, I think excess and deficiency should be healthy again this year, because we did underspend our budget a little last year because of COVID and closing down in March. I'm worried though that in our FY23 our excess and deficiency will go down, because a lot of that comes from the difference between our budget and the actual in revenue. So like Chapter 70 and transportation, we tend to be conservative in our estimates. So when the actuals come in, there is some excess and excess there. But this year we knew what they were, so there will be no excess. So that will impact excess and deficiency in a couple of years' time.
Thank you. Sharon, did that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, and let me just get clarification with the audio. Is this just for the taping?
So I believe it's the live feed. They're having a hard time hearing the Zoom folks.
Oh, I see.
So I
Okay.
don't know, maybe if it's just Sharon speaking in a soft voice,
No, I think it's the
the whole audio.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it is quite low, but we'll see how it does on the video.
okay.
But could they hear me? That's
Yes,
all I really want to
exactly.
know. Okay, good.
In there.
All right, just checking.
Exactly. Any other questions? Yes. Oh.
Joe, could you say something, please, in a loud booming voice?
Joe, we're doing a test on your mic. Can you say something?
Once you unmute.
Is he unmute? Okay. How many roads must a man walk down
Fabulous.
before you call him a man?
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so
So shy
much.
and retiring.
All right, that worked, Joe. Thank you. That was great.
Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So we're back to,
Well, I'm actually-
anybody else have questions for Michael?
I don't have a-
Everybody, Nancy?
I don't have a question, just thank you. I very much appreciate all these graphs
All right, good.
and charts,
Excellent.
because I think it's fascinating to look at, and I know that, I should say that I've heard the Harwich selectmen have talked in the past about how their budget has increased over the last 10 years. And so I think this will actually kind of hurt us in a little bit of a respect, because it lays it all out there to say
Yeah.
what their assessment has increased over, the last,
Yeah.
if you just take 3 or 4 years. And I also think that it's just really good information to have and publicize out there to say this is what we're looking at, and we're aware of it. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
No, a pleasure.
Yes,
Thank you very
wonderful.
much.
Thank you. So everybody else, any other questions, comments? All right, we're good. Thank you,
Very good.
Michael.
All right.
All right, and I guess you're up
I'm not-
next.
yeah,
So
I
the
don't
next
get to
item
do
of
it.
business is the student activity account transfer of funds to the Monomoy All Sports Booster Club. And in your packet, you've got, I guess, a statement here? So-
Yes, so essentially, the student activity accounts, which, I don't know how familiar you are with student activity accounts, but, those are accounts which the students' funds, which we sort of manage for them or look after for them, but they are the students' funds, but they were depositing sports-related fundraising in those accounts, and really they should have been going to the Booster Club, which had not yet set up his bank account and so on. So now they are, the Booster Club, All Sports Booster, is set up, and I guess back in March, most of the transfers were done, and this is just one last residual one to finish that work.
Okay, thank you, and that makes
pleasure.
sense. So it looks like you need a vote. It says, vote. So,
Just to-
Jackie?
In the amount of $1,286.16 to the Monomoy All Sports Booster Club sailing.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
And Nancy seconded. So we'll do, any discussion? Questions? All right, so we're going to do a roll call vote to accept this transfer. We'll start, Joe, we'll start with you.
Joe Osceola, aye.
All right, Sharon?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Joanne? And I'm an aye, so that's unanimous.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on to subcommittee chairs. Just an update, and for evaluation, Superintendent's Evaluation, Joe Osceola agreed to chair. So I just wanted to acknowledge our 4 subcommittee chairs, and thank you very much for stepping into those positions. All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is school committee goals. And in your packet is Joanne kind of put this together, and I did a little editing. So if you could pull it out, and we want to make sure that we captured our school committee goals as we discussed last week at our workshop. And I'm going to open it up for discussions and questions. So just take a moment to review. Any edits, clarifications? Joe?
Forgive me for shuffling through some paper, but I'll just go by memory. I had a full set of items. Oh, here it is, got tucked under something else. Okay. Just on the superintendent evaluation, there are really 2 things I'd like to see come out of this. And it does affect the committee this evening, or at least part of it does. Personally, I would like to see us move to a 2-year evaluation. I think that is something that the superintendent has earned. I think it's more than timely. But I personally, just personally, not necessarily where everybody stands, but I personally would be ready to discuss this concept or idea at a subcommittee meeting on the 13th, wrap it up in our discussion on the 20th, and present a proposal to the full school committee on the 22nd, so that the superintendent could incorporate 2-year goals if he wished. But I think my preference is not in keeping with the preference of every member on the committee. And the second thing I want, which is maybe as important as the first, is that the decision to move to a 2-year evaluation cycle, I think that should be unanimous. I think it would be a strong statement from the committee if we had not a majority, but a sense of unanimity, more than a sense, if we actually had unanimity. That would take time. That'll take some time. And I'd like to make sure we have the time to do that. So specifically what this means, when we come to the action steps on item number 4, Superintendent Evaluation, particularly for A and B, I would like to see a date attached to those. And this isn't a subcommittee proposal, it's a matter of the entire school committee decision, which is why I'm bringing it here and not raising it on the 13th. When does the school committee want to have a presentation of the recommendation by the subcommittee? When does the school committee feel prepared to take that vote? Personally, as much as I want to see a 2-year evaluation in place right now, I am more than prepared to wait a year if we can use that time well, so that people feel comfortable in making that decision, or not, or opposing it. Maybe we all oppose it. I don't think that's the most likely outcome, but perhaps that would be, and I'm open to that kind of discussion. So I'm trying to say there's 2 things. I want to make sure we don't forget this goal, put it in a subcommittee where it just withers and dies or gets forgotten, as things have in the past. And at the same time, I don't want to rush this so that anybody on our committee feels uncomfortable about making a decision. So the question now is really, what do people here feel is a fair and valid date by which we can get things done this year, so that at least by next, or at least by the end of this cycle, starting the next cycle next summer, if we do decide to move to 2 years, the superintendent will have time to do that and prepare his goals in that way. So I'm really asking for a question of dates and times, and I think to fail to do that would be a serious mistake for the committee as a whole. Although I do know 3 of the 4 of us are present here today. But again, I don't want to rush something so that members feel like they're driven to make a decision for which they're not quite ready.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Any comments on what Joe is saying? Nancy?
Yeah, Joe, thank you for thinking of that and coming with those opinions, because I think that it does need some time to kind of be stewed over. And I think at this point, being that we're in beginning of October still, but we're already in the school year and we should have the evaluation cycle starting, I think it would be a little presumptuous to try to move to a 2-year cycle at this point. So I just kind of jotted down while you were talking that it seems that you could take some time at the subcommittee level and come back, in the spring of 2021, whatever month you so choose in the spring, for step B. And then step C could be more towards the early summer. So again, pick your favorite month. And I think also under step A, the superintendent subcommittee will study the 1-year evaluation cycle. I think that needs to be specified, so that the superintendent subcommittee studies the 1-year cycle, and then for action step B, pick your favorite month in the spring of 2021, and then for action step C, pick your favorite month for the summer before we move into the next school year. That would be my suggestion.
Okay,
Thank
you. Joanne?
Joe, thank you for clarifying as well. I see it as 1 year, work on the 2 year. But I think maybe when we meet the 13th and probably the 13th, we should set up some kind of a calendar that makes sense for 1 year cycle, because we're not getting goals in, we need a date for goals, number one. And we also need to look at how do we go about the continuation when we do it for a 2 year cycle, if that's what we choose to do. When do we expect to see the goals? So I think we just have to even work on dates, and I don't mean specifically, but I mean months. Maybe the 13th, that should be our work for the 1 year cycle and the 2 year cycle. I think it has to be both.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments about this? Goal 4? So, Jackie?
Yeah, I would just say for the subcommittee to just make sure not to lose focus on the current goals, to make sure they're set and ready to go and you're on your way. And make sure you have your calendar set up for those updates, for the subcommittee reports as needed. And then start working on very, like Nancy said, and Joe, broad, you know, your goal is that your committee will organize when you're gonna meet, and by spring, sometime in the spring, pick a month and then work with the chair when you're gonna present your proposal, so that we have time to talk about it, go back and forth. You can finalize it so that in the summer, we're prepping, ready to go, so that in September, when we go into our new evaluation, we're ready to go.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? So what I've heard, and just wanted to make sure I heard all of this correctly. So in item A, under the action step number 4, so the Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee will study, so we're going to add those words in there. In B, the presentation, let's see, to MRSC for discussion in the spring of 2021. That's what I am hearing. And then in C, more accurate and valuable in the summer of 2021. Does that work for everybody? Joe?
Yes, you can either add the language, or we can have it understood that the specific times, as Ms. Scott suggested, in the spring and summer would be presented by the subcommittee itself, unless the school committee, of course, wants to make a date. The school committee as a whole, of course, has authority over a subcommittee. But if we say spring of 2021, with a specific date to be determined by the evaluation subcommittee. So just so we're clear about who's doing what when we look back this 6 months later.
Okay, thank you. Joanne?
And the other piece is, we have to set up, I think, dates for the 1 year cycle. Okay, so that
Yeah.
we know when our rough drafts are due, when we're going to discuss. Because we have to add one more step into what we've been doing. As I went back and read the literature Joe gave me, I realized we were missing one good step that we need to meet on.
Okay, Nancy and then Jackie.
Just one little, on part B, it should say by evaluation subcommittee.
That's
Oh,
subcommittee.
yes.
I will put that in.
Okay, thank you. Jackie?
Yeah, I'm just, C, I just don't remember C. C seems like it's broken out from B, that C should be part of B, because if B is presentation of the recommendation should include your revision of the process to make feedback more accurate and valuable. That's what should be in your recommendation. That's what you're doing. So I'm not sure why it's broken out, so maybe I'm reading it wrong.
Joanne?
It's in the wrong place,
Okay,
but it really was meant for if we're going to do the 1 year evaluation, so that we don't, so that our evaluation in total is much clearer than it's been in the past. We've left out 2 steps.
so
And-
can we
So do you want me to put it
somehow
up in A?
put in, regarding current super evaluation process?
Yeah.
Revised process to make feedback more accurate, or something like that?
Well, I think it can go up
Just so
under
it,
A.
yeah, and maybe that should be A.
Yeah,
Like, first and foremost, we're gonna revise the current process for the 2021.
I think you're right. Yep.
It makes more sense.
It makes a lot
Okay.
of sense.
Okay,
That should be A.
so C is going to move to A, and then they'll all,
And it should refer to the current process.
yeah, so we have to write the word current in there. Okay,
Current process, okay.
anybody else comments? Joe?
You folks have confused me, I must say. It doesn't happen often, but it did happen tonight, on 2 points regarding the present superintendent goals for the 2021 year. We're still working on those. We didn't have a quorum for our last subcommittee meeting, so we're a little bit behind. And so we have meetings on the 13th of October and the 20th of October. And I would suspect by that point, we should be ready, we should be prepared to have goals discussed by the school committee on the 22nd. And so we should be ready for this year, in other words, because we have 2 committee meetings to do it. And if need be, you know, on the 13th, it looks like we're way behind, which I don't think we are, then we can add more time if we need to. We can squeeze in more meetings if we need to, but we obviously want to get this set of goals for this year in place, presented to the public and voted on by the committee. For the second point on revised process to make feedback more accurate and valuable, my understanding of that was an opportunity by initially the subcommittee to take a look at some of the research findings on superintendent evaluation, particularly some material that has come out by the group called ASCD, or publishers ASCD, in particular the work of a researcher named Dr. James Strong out of William and Mary in Virginia, plus the DESI documents and so forth. So we came up with about 3 different items, totaling about 100 pages if you remove the endnotes and bibliography and so on. But we wanted to have some time to read the current research on superintendent evaluation, glean from it anything that might be useful, and see about perhaps revising either our process or some of our items that we evaluate. We have an evaluation tablet from the state of Massachusetts, and we do use that. And you know, we're not going to overturn Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, but particularly in our commentary, our writing of essays, etc., we may find in the research that there are items to focus in on or add to that we perhaps haven't been doing previously, or that there's a way to structure these evaluations that's perhaps better than what we've done. Or we may have some time, read this material and find out that we are, you know, we're already at the top of the game. That's not a bad thing to discover either. So that's why C was separated out from A and B just the way it was, because of two parallel but perhaps related things. Considering the possibility of a 2-year evaluation, and secondly, doing a deep dive into the current academic research on superintendent evaluation to see if there are gold nuggets that we might extract from that research.
Okay.
That sounds like a subcommittee needs to decide what page you're on.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So I guess we got some notes there. All right, all right, so I guess we're going to have to tidy that up down in number 4.
And my thought is, after we meet on the 13th, it might be easier to give it an order that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, that maybe tonight, I mean, we have it for potential vote, but we can bring this back, you know, this is a kind of our first read, so we'll bring
Right.
it back to the 22nd and hopefully have, some
Yeah.
tighter.
I think that would be a good way to do it.
Okay. What about any of the other goals? Any comments? And did we finish this? I'm sorry. Are we complete on 4 for right now? Okay. Any other goals? Superintendent?
I just have a friendly suggestion on Goal 1, Action Step B. I'd replace the word in the first line that says at least one meeting during, and I'd replace it with early in the budget process. I think the early in's important, and, so I think I can work with the chair on, trying to find a date that would be mutually convenient to, with folks from Harwich and Chatham, to have that happen sometime later in October or early November.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
And then we just, on that, want to make sure that we're adding the selectman
Yes.
representative.
Yep. So we can add the select, I guess, select board. I know one calls it select board and the other is selectmen, so we'll put that in there. So that's under action step B, and we're talking about goal number 1, establish a working group and hold at least one meeting early in budget process to discuss equity of regional assessment at the elementary level. The recommendation is to also add select board representatives, I would say.
Do you want the towns there for each, where it says select board, do you want Harwich Select Board, Chatham Selectmen?
I think it's a given, but
Okay.
what does everybody think?
Isn't it select boards?
Well,
have to
it
do it? I
don't
is
think
it is in Chatham. In
Okay.
Harwich, it's still selectmen.
I think you just put
But I think
select boards.
select board's fine.
Yeah.
I'm
Just
not worried
for
about it.
both of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just say select board representatives, or however you want to, representatives of select boards.
Representatives.
Yes.
Are we
Yeah.
taking town manager and finance managers out of that?
How does everybody else feel? Town managers and finance managers, do they need to come out of this? What is it, Nancy?
I would think that that would be, reach out to the select boards and
Okay.
ask them, in addition to one of their members. I think it's very important that we have select boards representation there. And then ask them who else they would like there.
Okay.
I mean, I'm assuming Michael will probably be there. Maybe, maybe not. So we'll have our financial representative, so they probably would want somebody, but I think leave it up to them if they really want to have the town manager, town administrator, and finance representative as well.
Okay. So you're recommending that we cross off town managers and finance managers, and then leave it up to the select board representatives who
I
they
would
want to bring
say.
to the table.
Okay.
Okay? Everybody good with that? Anything else in this section? Jackie?
Oh, not in this section. Well, yeah, number 1, I just have a typo, not even a typo. I just need a space after MRSC in parentheses.
Yep.
Monomoy Regional School Committee.
Actually,
Oh,
there shouldn't be a space where there is a space, and the other side is okay.
Oh, there's 2 spaces?
Yeah, you
Two
don't use
spaces?
spaces with
Okay, good.
parentheses.
I'm a very,
However, I did a little bit of even, I did.
okay,
A
fine.
little on one side and nothing
You
on the
win,
other.
Joanne.
okay.
Madam Chair?
But you're
Yes.
right.
Nancy?
I would, so I think the way action step B under goal 1 is extremely important to have, and I think that needs to start the process. And then I think we need to expand that, that concept of dealing with the elementary schools. And I'm not sure exactly if it would, so initially, I was actually thinking of proposing another goal in our realm, which would kind of go against everything that I was saying when we actually met last week and having very few goals. And then I was trying to incorporate it into the regional agreement, but then hearing Dr. Carpenter add in the early in the budget process wording, I think that will kind of alleviate what my major concern was, which was getting into budget season and having questions around the assessments regarding the elementary schools. Because we did have questions about those last spring. So I would like to flesh out somewhere, somehow, a larger picture group where we discuss the elementary schools in general, because we are dealing with low enrollment, especially in Chatham, and that doesn't look like it's going to change regardless of what happens with COVID. We're not all of a sudden going to get a huge influx in that building. And this is something that it talked about a little bit in the spring, but I think it's really important that it is a conversation that's initiated by the school committee. I think it's a conversation that we start out as a committee, and then we form a larger committee that involves the select boards, any representation that they might want. But I also think it really needs to include parents and possibly community members, but we can kind of decide that. I'm not sure if it necessarily needs to be a goal for this year, or if it might organically happen because of that meeting, and it will go forward from there. And I feel that it's really important that we start that conversation so that next July, we're not looking at a half of a kindergarten class in Chatham and wondering what we're gonna do. It's just, and it has to, because it could potentially involve changes, and it could potentially involve changes to the regional agreement, we need to involve the communities and not just be a school committee and select board's decision. It has to involve the greater communities and going out everywhere. So I'm not sure what to do with that.
Okay. So, did everybody hear, because Nancy brings up a very good point. So we can either consider what Nancy said, which is involve parent and community conversations as a separate goal, goal number 5, or find a way to incorporate it into goal number 1. Does anybody have a thought or comment about that? Jackie?
I'm thinking that instead of making it its own, even though it's a larger issue, it definitely, the reason it's coming forward is because of the regional agreement. So I think in B, we could even go as far as establish a working group, including, and then list community stakeholders, parents, superintendent, representatives from the school committee, select board, and hold, I don't know how you want to begin holding meetings early in the elementary level, early in the budget process to discuss. So I'm wondering if you list that there, that helps break it out a little bit, or specifies more.
Yeah.
Or maybe you just make, maybe instead of establish a working, make a B, C, and D. Move C to D and create another line in there under 1.
Yeah, that's
Another
what,
action
yeah.
step.
Another
That might be
action
better.
step.
Right. That's what I was thinking, because for me, I think it's 2 different conversations. One of them is about the assessment, and I think the parent and community conversations are going to be something different.
So maybe
Yeah.
make C D and make a C.
Okay.
Make a new C.
Make CD.
All right, so we're going to take C and make it D, and then we're going to add a C,
Yep.
establish a working group of parent and community members,
Community
Parents.
stakeholders.
and community stakeholders?
Yeah, community stakeholders.
All right, and I guess with the word parent, should we also add the caregivers? All right, so caregivers,
And you can take out parents.
yes.
Yep.
And do we need to have a purpose for that? Establish a working group of caregivers and community stakeholders to discuss,
Do you want to also include school committee members,
and school,
Superintendent.
yes, and school committee members.
administration, and select
Look
boards?
at my,
Do you want select boards to be part of that conversation?
I'm sorry, I'm looking to see what I
think they
drafted
have
an
to
email, and
be.
I'm looking to see what I drafted, see if I
Okay.
had any words of wisdom there.
I'm kind of thinking what you had in B
Establish a working group of stakeholders.
should be,
And then start
should
listing
be.
them.
What you have in B we should elaborate on And then the part about,
But state,
so like one goal should be establishing this group,
yeah.
and the
Oh.
next would be to do what? Establishing the group to, like, so then you say, after you establish this group and you identify what it is, then it's gonna be C, use subgroup, or whatever you're gonna call it, to discuss equity of regional assessment at the elementary level.
Right, okay, I think Nancy has some wording. Go
Nancy.
ahead, Nancy.
This is my genius wording from the other day that I didn't ever send. Organize and lead a group focused on the district elementary schools' population decline and fiscal impact on each town.
That's B. Perfect.
So that's B.
Yeah.
No, I thought B
No.
was money.
No, that's C?
That was,
B was budget.
That comes before,
I think B is perfect as it is for the point that we need it to be, which is to facilitate FY22.
Yes.
Right.
okay.
And
Right.
then after we work on B, so B is important in its own right,
Right.
the new action step C could be, I mean, this was just my idea, this isn't a committee idea, would be for us as a committee to organize and lead a group focused on the district elementary schools' population decline and fiscal impact on each town.
That makes sense.
Okay, did everybody hear what Nancy said, Joe and Sharon?
It only took 4 of us.
Were you okay with it?
Would you send
I'm
that?
not
Send
sure.
it to me?
Oh, go ahead, Sharon.
Wait a minute.
I'm not sure if the only problem is the elementary school. The elementary school is the most obvious situation, but of course, there's follow-up impact. So I have a couple more comments too about this goal thing, but in general, we have made this up and put it away and taken it out when we're going to evaluate it. So if we might look at this as a work in progress, that it's not like today we're going to have this correct. It may be that we decide to put something together on this today, and then 2 or 3 months from now, as we're working on this, we might want to change some of these action steps slightly.
I hear what you're saying. I think this is a first read, and then we're going to bring this back on the 22nd. And I think it's good to at least get something in stone. I mean, we can certainly bring something back and edit it in the future, but I do think it's important to have something set. It's just my take. Yes, Superintendent?
I like the way the addition you were making starts, Nancy. I think if I was trying to steer it, I would not have it looking at the impact of declining enrollment on a fiscal thing, but I would prefer us to look at it from a child development and learning standpoint. That I think they're two very different conversations. I think B is this fiscal conversation that we need to have, and I think C needs to be a bit of a visioning session on the best, the best educational program we can put on at the elementary level for appropriate child development and learning, given the enrollment declines that we're seeing in both schools.
Okay. Nancy?
So to kind of pigtail on that, and thank you, I very much agree with that comment. So we could change it to say, organize and lead a group focused on the district elementary schools, population decline, and the educational impact, or educational vision.
For child development and learning, Dan.
Yeah, I threw in the developmental piece, trying to kind of acknowledge that there's a lot of social emotional stuff above and beyond, just sort of the typical teaching and learning that I think are really important in this conversation.
So district elementary schools, population decline, and child development and learning.
Too many ands, comma, child development and learning platform, or
Platform?
community, or something, we can wordsmith it.
So Yeah, we can, yeah, I guess we can wordsmith this, but I think Joanne's getting some notes, and we can kind of clean this up, and maybe just make sure we've captured it. But yes, I would agree. I like the two
Yeah, I do too.
conversations. All right, so, so adding that third action step with that separate conversation, anything else in here that needs to be adjusted? All right, Joe?
Thank you. I think have we dropped the word equity of regional assessment? Have we dropped that idea? Because I think that was a driving concern that brings this goal into being in the first place. So we can't lose sight of it.
To discuss regional
And
assessment.
as far as parent involvement is concerned, including parents in the discussion is fine. That would be, how that would be determined, I'm not sure, I guess volunteers. But it would be a decent start. But what I think we might do, at some point, would have to include a discussion on the entirety of the action step, whatever the committee came up with and whatever we thought was a good idea. At some point, we're going to need, I think, to have a kind of public forum where people in Chatham and Harwich can come forward and talk about whatever changes we made. Parent representation on the committee wouldn't be a sufficient substitute for that. So I don't have specifics on this. I don't have a specific date on this, but I think we had a difficult talk, I think, back in February of 2019 in the Harwich Center, but I think it was an awfully useful one. And something similar, I think, is needed, where we really need to talk to the public at large. That could be part of submitting a red line version. It could come after, what have you, but just want to throw that idea out there if anyone thinks that's worth incorporating. It doesn't need to be written down here, but perhaps kept in our minds that in addition to having a few parents on the committee, we want to speak to the larger publics of Harwich and Chatham.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? Sharon?
Her microphone.
Then
If
you'll
we're
need to,
finished with
yep.
1, I have comments on number 2 and 4.
Okay. Anybody, are we good for 1?
I'll just say real quick, I
Yes.
agree with Joe,
Okay,
that we do need to have parent forums. It's not just limited to a group.
okay. We could put that in there, or just let it come up organically.
Organically.
Yeah,
Organically.
okay. All right, great, thank you. Sharon, go ahead with 2 and 3.
2 and 4.
Oh, 2 and
Okay,
4.
just to
Actually-
finish up on 4, I know you probably thought we were finished with that, but number A and B, I don't have any problem with. I do have a problem with C. Revised process to make feedback more accurate and valuable. So,
Oh, she's on 4.
Yes,
I wouldn't mind it saying consider revising process or something like that, or leaving C off, but this is the standard form. I'm not sure. Accurate sounds like it's a value judgment. I don't think we're going to be able to come up, like if it was numbers, to do with fiscal or something, maybe we could say accurate, but I'm not sure that evaluations, I don't know. I just think that's not a good wording for it. Valuable, maybe. Maybe we could say revised process to make feedback more valuable. Because
Right.
sometimes you wonder why you're doing evaluations
okay,
and how valuable they are.
so,
So that's my only comment on 4.
okay, so hold on, I'm gonna let Joanne respond to that. Go ahead, Joanne.
The accurate goes to rubrics and performance standards. And those are what I had in mind when I wrote accurate. And those do have the columns Do you know what I'm talking about, the rubric?
I know, I'm not.
And
a
then the
rubric very
performance
well, but
standards?
If you're doing yours and, each one of us is doing it, and we have different points on it, who's to say what's accurate? There
Well,
are
that,
different perceptions about what we see. It's not like a mathematical
it is though.
thing.
Well, that's one of the steps, Sharon, I hear you, and I agree that that's what happens. But there's a step that we missed, which is the board coming together and looking at our rubrics and hashing it out. When I read the DESI piece, obviously you work independently, but then there's a point in time when you come together and work as a group. And that's when you're looking for your accuracy on the rubric. But valuable, I think the written piece that each person does, that to me has a lot of value. Having been put on a rubric and having had a written assessment, it makes you reflect on what you're doing. So I think there is both accuracy and value. It's accuracy for rubric, performance standards, valuable for your written piece. So I kind of would like to keep that there because I think that's where we go astray.
Okay, thank you.
I disagree totally with that thing about accurate, because I know the process is individuals do their thing, they put it in, it gets averaged out, and that's how it gets done. I don't think our committee comes together and decide that, member 1 or 6 or something is inaccurate in how they view their job, or the superintendent's job in this case. So I don't understand at all what you're trying to say.
Okay,
Okay.
we're gonna, I think we'll take that back
To the committee.
To the subcommittee, yes. We'll take your feedback there.
The other thing that is on number 2, the comment on the strategic plan is that I would request that whatever is going to be done, that either we come up with a plan ahead, or Mark comes up with a plan, so we know like a month or at least many weeks in advance what's going to be on there. Like the information for tonight, we got like 2 days ago, and there wasn't a way to go back and review all the strategic plan and what's going on. So there's not a way to be, in my mind, really prepared for what we're discussing tonight, unless we have this planned out, what those things are going to be in the strategic plan, so we have weeks to have a chance to look at that and reflect on it.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Jackie?
I think, Sharon, you mentioned this last year as well, and I believe at that time we discussed that Leah may have a schedule of intended, I guess you would call topics or timeline for items through the year that they work off of to set the agendas, and that you can at any time contact and find out what's coming forward even sooner than when you get your agenda packet. So that's actually already available to you. And it's also on the website. So
Okay,
so exactly what you're
email
asking,
to us
exactly what you're asking is available.
That's, I know on many years we've had on our, yearly thing where it's on there, so I will, I guess, talk with Leah about it.
Okay.
That's fine, thank you.
We'll make sure Leah gets you the link to where you can see it, Sharon.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's making note of that right now. Anything else, Sharon, on that? On number 2? Or were you good on that?
I think I'm fine on everything else, thank you.
Okay. All right, any final comments? We've taken lots of notes, and we'll go back and clean this up. Anything else, Joe?
Madam Chair, just information, I'm requesting information if you have it. Do we have any more knowledge about the November 7th meeting and the possibility of looking at a speaker's presentation, the possibility of the school committee taking part in that? I think the last time around, registration wasn't open and we didn't really have much information. Have we had any progress on that or no?
Actually, I am going to ask Leah, because Leah was researching, and as of last Friday, I don't think it had opened. Go ahead, Leah.
No, they had, pardon me, they hadn't opened the link yet, so they said that once they, pardon me, once they set the link, that they were gonna send it out to everybody.
Yes.
And that I could either register you on behalf of the school, or you could register yourselves. It's free of charge, though.
Yes. So we are monitoring that, Joe. It hasn't opened yet, but Leah's going to get notified, and then we can decide. It is free, so we're not paying for it, so we can register. If you want to go, just send me an email or let me know if you definitely want, you know that you want to go. And we'll go ahead, I'll give those, go ahead.
Just my concern is that it could be a school committee activity as the fulfillment of some of the goals that a majority of the committee adopted.
Yes.
So it would just be one possibility. Any individual, of course, could, but it's a question of whether the committee as a group wants to participate in an activity. I think Dr. Carpenter also had an idea as well. It could be either or. Either one would be fine with me. I just was curious if any openings existed yet, and and if so, then we could, as a committee with greater information, could decide what we wanted to do.
Okay, thank you. And I'll keep you updated on that. But Superintendent, since he brought you up, would you like to address another opportunity, I guess, for us to learn?
Well, I've been looking into, there are organizations that, that could come down and do a training for the school committee. I'm sure these days with COVID, they can do some trainings virtually. But I have reached out to, the EDCO collaborative that has a sort of diversity awareness branch of it, and just inquired with them. I haven't heard back yet, but whether they might be able to do something for us that would meet with the goal to be parameters.
Okay. I guess my question would be, is there an investment in that? Would that involve a cost for what you're suggesting?
Probably so.
Okay.
I mean, not huge in the global scheme of things,
Okay.
but yes.
All right. So I guess, any comments or questions? Nancy?
Could you just remind me the time
Yes.
and the date? The
yeah,
date was
it-
11/7.
Yeah, it's November 7th from 10 until 11:30, so it's 90 minutes on a Saturday morning. It is remote, virtual, so, and it is the same speaker that is coming to the staff. So we do, and this is free of charge, so I feel like it's a good opportunity for us. All right, and we'll keep you posted on that, because we're monitoring. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, and.
Oh,
So so it is the same speaker, but it's I think the nature of, somebody doing a, sort of a diversity awareness
Yeah.
presentation to members of all school committees across Massachusetts is one thing. I think to have somebody, have an entity come and have each of us, superintendent, each school committee member, sort of sort of internally start, digging down, I think is, really what doesn't happen in one of those larger trainings. And I do think that if you want to really start moving diversity awareness forward, you have to start at your, at the personal level first, and move from there.
Okay, point taken. So it's more comprehensive, yeah. All right, so we'll continue. Nancy, go ahead.
Nope, but
Oh, you good? Okay. All right, so we will stay on top of this, Joe, and I'll inform people as I get more information. Any other questions, comments about the goals before we move on? Nancy?
that's where I was trying to jump, sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
A question, I can't remember what we decided with goal 3 as somebody as a point person. Did we point Joanne into that point person?
I don't know
We
that
talked vice chair a lot on,
Yeah, I don't think we assigned that task to anybody.
The reason and I'm not it, but I feel like the other goals have
Committees.
a lead, like either a committee or past experience or something, and that one just doesn't.
Okay. So Nancy's recommending that we have a point person, I guess, here, or maybe two. Sharon, in our notes, we, I think, did you express interest in goal 3? Or did we incorrectly write your name down?
Who's on mute?
Is that a no? And you may have to turn your mic on. Sharon? Oh,
They shouldn't put this video and, mic like within one finger difference. Yes, I would be interested in that.
okay.
Excellent.
All right, so we're going to put you down, Sharon, as our point person for goal 3.
And
All
then,
right.
and then just something that if the chair and the vice chair, when you guys are cleaning this up,
Yep.
I think it would be very helpful to have some times, like dates, for when the goal should be, or the action steps should be completed by. I mean, you look at the step, or goal 1, we have dates for the 2 action steps. Action step B is early in the budget season. Dr. Carpenter mentioned sometime soon in October. But then looking at goal 2 and goal 3, there's really no dates there. So if you guys could come up with some rough dates, just to kind of give us some timelines. But I think that's kind of up to you in terms of setting the year-long agenda and when things will fit in.
Okay.
But I don't have any suggestions on dates. It would be good to have them
Okay.
in there.
All right.
I mind setting, something for A, exploring how other school committees are implementing this by, say, some school committee meeting in December.
Okay.
The other one, I'm not sure yet about that.
Okay. Since you're going to be our point person, do you want to set a date? Oh, there you go. And we do, maybe by mid-December? Do you feel comfortable with that, Sharon?
The end of December, that's fine.
Oh, by the end? Okay, so we're going to put by December 31, 2020. All right, so we'll have a date there. All right. Anything else? All right, Joanne and I will go back and clean this up, and it will come back on the 22nd.
This
All
will be
right.
interesting.
Okay, so moving on to strategic plan report. All right, and we have our director of.
Look at those cute little bambinos.
Good evening, Mark Smith, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. So, it was probably a month and a half ago, came and gave the school committee sort of an overview presentation of the strategic plan update and where we were. There were some members of the school committee had asked for some details in some specific areas, and I had mentioned at that point that I had a plan to write a report, but we had some health thing going on in the school district that was distracting things. But I had been able to get some time to do some quiet work, and I was able to complete the report. So I gave the committee a copy of the report, which details action step by action step where we are after completing the first year of the strategic plan. And I'm really just wanted to be here to answer any questions, provide any other detail that you need. I'm not going to go through all 20-something pages of the report, as I said, and I'm happy to come back, at another meeting if people need more time to digest it. But I didn't have a specific presentation because I sort of already gave you the high-level presentation. But here's a more complete and formal report.
Okay, great, thank you. Questions, comments this evening for Mark? All right, I don't see anything in the Zoom, I don't see anything here. It looks like we need more time to digest.
Yeah, and like I said,
All
I'm
right.
happy to come back at a later meeting and answer any questions.
Okay, perfect, thank you
Thanks.
very much, Mark. All right, so now we're going to move into our subcommittee reports. This is the first reading, the third first reading of our school committee policy, VE.
I didn't want to talk about it.
All right, so, Jackie, did you want to kickstart us on this, or?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. All right. I was looking at all the cute pictures in the strategic plan.
Oh, yes.
I love pictures. Okay, so you guys have two drafts in front of you. One actually says school committee draft, and the other says the general overview. Okay, sorry,
hold
this
on,
one
let's
says
look.
it really big.
So the one with the big
This one
draft
says
is the
it
draft.
really small.
I think, hold on,
I
let's
couldn't
see.
read the really small one because it was small.
So we're not looking at the small one?
So, I want you to look at the one where draft is written, is not in bold, and is the same size as the rest of the writing.
Are you sure?
Yes,
Let's see.
because everything in red in the larger one has either been removed or corrected or added. So you can see those changes.
Oh, I see.
But this one that has fewer pages and has the draft in small writing is the most up-to-date policy and is probably the easiest one for me to show you any, like, immediate changes. Okay, so if you go to page 1, page 2, page 3 under agenda format, we added public comments and guidelines at school committee meetings as requested. And then in yellow and red, you'll see we've added a few more things there. And what we did basically in the red and the other one is took out a lot, anything that was redundant that you guys were saying that was repeated and repeated. So that's actually why the policy looks smaller, because we didn't repeat anything. Let's see, what else did we do here? You can see where we strike page 4, number 1, about the regularly scheduled school committee meetings, and we updated 1, 2, and 3, getting rid of extenuating circumstances, adding at their discretion. Number 5, any committee member may direct questions to the speaker. That was moved from number 4 under guidelines. And then you'll see where we updated number 5 and 6, and then we struck 5 and 6. You'll see it's redlined.
Okay, good. And just for clarification, so the larger word draft
Yeah,
is the draft,
is the
is the
draft.
current draft. The more colorful one with the smaller one is the one before it, just for clarification. So, so you have
So I guess,
filed-
are there any questions about
Yeah.
the changes?
So any questions with what we did recently? And I see Sharon's hand, so go ahead, Sharon.
I just thought I'd clarify in what I think is a succinct way, but even one of the things I'm clarifying, I would like to change. So basically, we had this discussion, and a pretty lengthy discussion at our last school committee meeting. And the school committee wanted to send it back to the subcommittee for further consideration. Joe was kind enough to send us some meeting procedures from another school system for consideration. We discussed all of this at length, and at the end of our discussion, basically the results were that we decided that the majority of the subcommittee decided that 3 minutes would be enough for the original public comment, the first public comment, because the chair could expand that time, especially if there weren't a lot of speakers. And then that the second one was more for clarifying questions. And then the 2 changes were, if the public had a question about the upcoming agenda, they could contact either the chair of the school committee or the superintendent of the school committee. I don't quite get the superintendent part, not that I object to it, but it seems as though it wouldn't be, it would just be contacting the chair, to me, to ask something or state something. The purpose of the second, I think that's I think that's it. I think it's just those things.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. So Sharon is asking then, I guess this is on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So page 5, fifth paragraph down, public comment is not a discussion debate. So what Sharon is suggesting, it says they can contact, if somebody has a question about an upcoming agenda item, this is strictly a meeting agenda item, they can contact either the chair or the superintendent. So Sharon's saying it should just be the chair. How does everyone feel about that? Anybody have an opinion?
Well, I think we discussed that either could answer the question if they'd set the agenda together, and one may be more appropriate than the other to answer the question.
Okay. So Sharon, I don't know if you heard that. I'll repeat what Jackie said, and then I'll take Joe's question. Jackie said that she felt since it's a joint agenda, so the superintendent and the school committee chair work together to put the agenda, so it might be more appropriate sometimes for the superintendent to answer the question. So that.
It's not that I object to it, it's just that the superintendent has so much to do that the school committee meeting itself, it just seems, not that you don't have plenty to do, Tina, but I just think it would make it simpler for the agenda, but that was just my 2 cents.
All right, thank you. Joe?
Again, I have trouble with clarity and understanding what is being said during the meeting, and that, I don't know if it's where Jackie is sitting or what in terms of the room, but I have a hard time understanding that. I would say when I listen in the next day to the meeting as it's posted online, all of you are speaking, or all of you are coming through with perfect clarity. It's just during the meeting when I actually personally need to know what you're saying. It's sometimes hard. So I'm just going to take a step or two back and ask you some very basic questions.
Okay.
First off, I'm dealing with the draft with draft highlighted in boldface and in large type.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Wonderful. And items that are in red are being added, correct?
Yes.
Or
Either added or revised in some way, yes.
Okay, but what is in red is something that has been revised and added, but would be part of a permanent policy statement. Is that correct?
That is correct, unless it's in parentheses, which it means it's just instructions for our internal.
Okay. Having that clear, we can continue discussion. I have a couple points I'd like to make, but I'm more than willing for others to go first.
All right, I think there is one clarification that I want Leah to make, and I think it was based around notification, Leah?
Correct.
Sorry, so Leah, if you want to come to the mic for a sec? Because Leah assists, she's not sitting with us, but normally she's here and she's part of us. So
I
go
just
ahead.
wanted to, pardon me, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to point out that the notification of the school committee meetings, it reads that we will actually file with the towns. But when we were first established, I believe it was somewhere around 2011, 2012, it was established that the Monomoy Regional School District would be the official posting place for our meetings. So if we could just make a modification to that language.
Yes, thank you. And tell me where
page?
that is again, sorry.
Notification of school committee meetings.
Thank you.
Pardon me, it's on the page 2 bottom.
Oh, page 2 bottom, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll need to make sure that, yes, that is correct. Thank you, Leah, for catching that. Okay, go ahead, Sharon.
Just to reiterate what Joe just said, whatever Leah just said, it sounded like she was speaking from underwater, but I'm hearing...
Reverb. It's a lot of reverb.
Yeah, but I can hear you perfectly crisp, Tina, so if you can summarize or state that somehow, it
Yes.
would be very helpful.
Absolutely. So on the bottom of page 2, and again, this is the draft, the big draft with the word big draft. So it's on the bottom of page 2. Leah is correct. It is correct that the notification of school committees is posted on our website. It is no longer posted to each town. you know, so it still has some old language in there when it was Harwich and Chatham, but we're now Monomoy. So it's being posted to the website, so we're just going to correct that first paragraph to make sure that it's, you know, it's going to the right place. Does that answer your question?
That means this has to be another first reading.
Yep,
Okay,
great.
Push hard enough.
it will keep going on.
Policy
Joe,
that
we're going to
never
go back
dies.
to you. Oh, Sharon, was that good? Did you have anything else?
No, I think that's so important because certainly whatever we're doing has to be in here, not what, I mean, we need it correct. So I'm
Yes.
very grateful for Leah to point that out.
We
Yes.
use the website all the
And,
time.
yes, and she did pass that along, so I think somewhere that slipped through the cracks, so, thank you, Leah.
3 readings ago.
Yes, somehow we dropped it, so. Yeah, I'm gonna, go to Nancy and then Joe, I'm gonna come back to you. Go ahead, Nancy.
At the top of page 3, above agenda format, it says, as an alternative method of notice, a regional school district may by majority vote. So it's some of the language is in there.
And tell me again, Nancy, I'm sorry. So it's on page 3 under agenda format.
Above agenda
Oh,
format.
okay.
I was trying to get
Oh,
the,
I see, yes, it is in there.
so it's in there somewhere. It's just, we did take that vote.
Yes, you
so-
are correct. So it is in there, it just needs to show up. I don't know why, okay, all right. Okay, so we'll fix that. So the correct language is in there, but for some reason, we have an old paragraph that really should come out. All right, thank you. Joe, we're gonna come back to you.
We might have to rework that whole section.
That be at the present time?
Yes,
Wonderful. Things I have to say are under the public comment and guidelines at school committee meetings. So that brings us to page 4. And a couple things to run through. So the second full paragraph that begins "any citizen" on page 4.
Oh, how'd that not get changed?
I would just,
yes,
I would just remove "any citizen" and say "interested persons."
yep, yep,
We don't define who or what a citizen is.
You are correct.
What town, for instance. If I'm a parent from
Yep.
Dennis and my child attends
right,
the high school, am I a citizen, not a citizen? I'd leave it as "interested persons," and then the chair can be a filter
yes.
to see who and what is appropriate.
Yes, and you are correct, Joe, and that was an oversight on our part, because we thought we went through and cleaned it all up, but obviously we missed one, so we'll fix that.
Oh, I just thought, okay.
Yes,
That was on the second.
Going
page.
down
I'm
further,
gonna lose my
where it
share.
says "public comment is not a discussion," that's an excellent statement, and then there's the question of whether you contact the chair of the school committee or the superintendent. I would just leave it as is. I think you've said it well. The superintendent is a very busy man, but there are people in the public who seem unaware of that or uninterested in that, and will contact the superintendent if they have a concern and expect him to answer within a few hours. So there are people who will just contact the superintendent of schools anyway, and it's not unexpected. So I think it just makes sense to keep it the way you did.
okay,
A little more controversially, going down to item number 1, the public comment. I think the 15-minute period is certainly sensible, and couple that with the 3-minute presentations as MASC recommends, I'd also agree with. I would suggest, however, that we omit second public comment entirely and any of the related language, which would be, I think, the last 6 words of the first sentence in item number 1. I suggest omitting the second public comment because I think the intent to limit it to clarifying questions is simply ineffective and undoable in real life. I think what is going to happen is that at the end of the meeting, clarifying questions might be asked, and then almost immediately a comment will follow. Chair can try and limit it, but sometimes someone's already going to be launched into a comment. Then it's going to be, well, just let the person finish. And a couple of months down the road, what's going to happen is that the distinction between question and comment is going to be blurred and disappeared. This document will then go into a very thick file, and this distinction will be forgotten. The second comment is going to be a public comment. And this distinction will be forgotten, just as we were talking about chairs for subcommittees. That was in our handbook, a much, much smaller document, and we have ignored it or forgotten the need for subcommittee chairs, and we've ignored that or forgotten that for years, several years. This too will be forgotten, and so we will not be able to put the impediment that we're suggesting. And secondly, there's no need for it. If you really have the need for a clarifying question, you can listen or look at what is put online by the next day, or you can write to the school committee person whose comments caused you to have a question in the first place. So I would say omit it entirely, because the effort to limit it is simply not going to work.
Okay.
It seems like it will now. A couple of months down the road, it's not going to work.
Can I just
And
add
then lastly,
clarification on that?
Actually, if you can hold on, Joe, I think Nancy had something to clarify with you, so hold on a second. Go ahead, Nancy.
I wasn't understanding, Joe, what are you asking are you saying to cross off the new red line that sentence the purpose of, or are you saying to drop the second public comment, period?
I'm combining the both. I'm saying drop the second comment, period, because the purpose of, which introduces a limitation on the second comment, is a limitation that a chair with all the best intent in the world will ultimately be unable to enforce in real life, in real time. Clarification questions will become comments almost immediately, and eventually the barrier that we have on paper will be just that, something on paper. It'll be blurred. So I'm saying drop what's in red entirely and any of the related language that goes with it, such as the 6 words preceding what's in red.
All right, and Joe,
If you're really going to enforce this, the only thing you can do, the only really effective thing you can do is just omit second comment entirely.
Okay, and before you move to your next point, I think Jackie has a clarifying comment. Go ahead, Jackie.
Joe, I'm going to lift my mask up a little bit just so you can make sure you hear me. I just want to clarify, because I'm on the subcommittee, that...
Thank you, Jackie. You're coming through loud and clear. Wonderful.
It's on. Okay, so page 4, item number 1 is what we're discussing. And if I understand you correctly, as you want it as you want it to state, it should read, public comment shall be for a period of 15 minutes and shall generally follow the opening of the meeting. The committee reserves the right to rearrange its agenda to accommodate scheduled presenters. At the discretion of the chair, public comment can be extended.
That's exactly right. Thank you. That's exactly what I'm arguing for in any event. Yes.
And anywhere where it mentions the public comment at the close of the meeting, we should also, you're suggesting we also omit.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so that is your suggestion. That's Joe's. Okay. And Joe, you said you had another comment. Or another point.
Yes, on the next page, item number 6. Says the chair of the meeting after a warning.
Can you be more specific?
This would be, it's...
The item, it's right above remote participation.
Yeah.
It's number 6 in red. it says the chair of the meeting after a warning. Is that clear?
Yep,
or
yep,
can
we've
you
got
locate
it.
that?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I would suggest omitting the constitutionally protected language. I don't think it's necessary or even applicable. I think it should say the chair of the meeting after a warning reserves the right to terminate speech that constitutes threats that may provoke a violent reaction. I don't know about the constitutionally protected part. I don't think it's relevant or valid. For instance, I have a constitutional right to express my opinion by burning the American flag. However, I think it would be a problem for that constitutionally protected expression of speech to be brought into a school committee meeting where I burn the flag that's sitting above, well, I'll bring my own flag and not burn school property. I think it would be wrong to say you can have a constitutionally protected right to burn an American flag in a school committee meeting because you're protesting the teaching of American history. You object to the way that it's being taught. Maybe you object to it from the right, maybe you object to it from the left, but that constitutionally protected speech, I'm not really in favor of that at a school committee meeting. So I would just say the chair should terminate speech that constitutes a threat that may provoke a violent reaction, cause a breach of the peace, incite lawlessness, etc., or contain obscenities, although I think obscenities are constitutionally protected. I mean, you can read Ulysses, Lady Chatterley's lover, etc., etc.
Okay.
Those were all constitutionally approved, or approved by Supreme Court anyway, based on the Constitution.
I think that was
Sharon, hold on one
second.
second. So, Joe, just for clarification, so number 6, the chair of the meeting after a warning reserves the right to terminate speech which constitutes true threats. So you're basically asking us to take out the constitutional bit. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and instead of are likely to, I'd say may. You know, I'd give more authority to the chair. It doesn't have to be likely to constitute a threat. I can't always tell that in advance. You know, you may not be able to tell likely. I personally have an explosive temper. You know, people can't always tell that something is likely to provoke me. I just flare up, you know? So something that may provoke, I might give the chair a little more authority and help the chair run the meeting more fruitfully.
Can we provoke Joe?
Yeah. All right, Joe, thank you. Anything else before I move to Sharon? Oh, hold on.
I'm listening to the last thing that Joe said. I'm not really sure, but you were on the, on this committee last year, Joe, so you may know that Melissa takes some of these things directly from Mass law. And that last thing that you're talking about, the wording of, I'm not sure, but somehow I believe she took that just directly from Mass law. So, if we're going to vote on this tonight, I would more want to keep it the way it is, but I'm not against going back to the committee again because of your comments. And the other thing is that the last time we were talking about this at our last school committee meeting, I don't know who it was, but somebody brought it up that it seems like the difference of opinion we're having, not that it's right or wrong, but a difference of opinion that some members on the school committee are having, is that in here we say we very much want to hear from the public. And we all agree that this is a meeting, our meeting, where we're trying to get business done. So if it's solely that, and we don't want to hear from the public, then that's one thing. But if we do want to hear from the public, which personally I do. You know, it could get out of control, but we're not anywhere near any problem like that. So I like the idea of having the 2 public comments. I didn't want to reduce it to 3 minutes, but I will agree to reduce it to 3 minutes because I think the chair could easily expand that time and would. And I do also agree with you, Joe, that it will be hard to, if it's for the purpose of asking the clarifying question, that at the end of the clarifying question, they may state some opinion or something. I don't know that we will be able to control that, but we could still control the 3 minutes. And I'm not even addressing I think it's well addressed about if something's threatening. So I would personally like to hear from the community. I also, some member of the public did have a question about a wording in here that says something about no person will speak more than once. And I took that in here to mean on the first public comment period that they'd speak once. And it didn't preclude them from not, in addition, speaking the second time if they felt like they needed to. But that in there isn't exactly clear what we're saying.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Jackie?
I think this is working better for you guys, so I'm gonna do this if that's all right with everyone. Sharon, if you can find where that is in the policy that you want us to look at that, once I'm done, just let me know. Second, I just want to clarify that I don't think anyone on this committee has said that they do not want to hear from the public at any time, and I just want to make that clear to the public watching right now, that I think we've all been very diligent in making sure there is an opportunity, if not more, for the community to be heard during our meetings. So just to get that out there. There is a paragraph in here that says, the school committee believes that the school district community should have an opportunity to comment to the committee on issues that affect the school district and are within the scope of the committee's responsibilities. Therefore, the committee has set aside a period of time at each meeting to hear from the public. In addition, if the committee believes that an issue requires a dialogue with the school district community, the committee may schedule a separate public hearing on that issue, which we have in the past many times, including forums. So just so that's very clear, I think we're addressing that issue. And in my opinion, because it's just my opinion, is that we've tried the second public comment, and in my opinion, this is the school committee's meeting. We have an opportunity for community members and other stakeholders to speak to us in many forums, and I feel that it's best to go back to one public comment section, either at the beginning or the end. I think either is fine and effective. I do agree with Joe that one of the many reasons that I feel a second public comment section may not be as effective is because it can prompt question and answer sessions, which is not the intent of our business meetings. That's more appropriate for public hearings, forums, and using all the avenues that we put in the policy to contact your chair, to contact your school committee members, and to contact your superintendent. So that is where I'm standing on the second comment and removing that from the policy.
Thank you, Jackie. Anybody else?
Oh, and Sharon found that thing.
Are you continuing?
Did Sharon find that?
Oh, Sharon, Jackie was asking where in the policy that you were referring to just earlier.
Yeah, that's page 4, isn't it? First paragraph?
Page 4. At the top, Jackie, page 4, the school committee believes that the school district should have an opportunity to comment.
No, I read that.
Oh.
There was the last
Yeah.
thing she was talking about.
Oh.
About speaking once.
Oh, actually, yes, that is here somewhere because I did, hold on. Hey, Sharon, if you can hear me, do you recall exactly where we referenced a person that could not speak twice in the same comment section?
Yes, so, my thing on my tablet doesn't have the numbers of the pages, but On the page, which might be 4 or 5, number 3 is the first thing. It says speakers are allowed to do 3 minutes. And,
Yeah.
number
It's-
4, number 4
It's
is
number 2 that says about speaking once.
Yes.
Number 2
Yeah,
at the
it's
bottom
number
of
2.
page 4, Sharon,
Yep.
that's the one that says about speaking
Yep,
once.
it's number 2 at
Yeah.
the bottom of page 4.
Yeah,
Okay,
which-
thank you.
But then it says without permission of the chair.
Right,
So-
so they can ask, permission of the chair. So it's not that we're taking it away, but they can ask, and the chair, at the discretion of the chair. So, just make that comment. Anybody else, comments, questions? Nancy?
To go along with Joe's citizen, the bottom of page 4, number 2, it says any citizen wishing, so any interested person.
Missed another one, okay.
I got it too.
Oh, yes, we did.
And yes, all citizens shall speak, so all interested persons, thank you. I didn't notice that one. I think we need to type that in PDF and do a word search for
Yeah, I know
citizen.
Yeah, we should.
And then I'm just gonna go back to the public comment. Having them at the beginning and the end of the meeting. I was not an advocate of having a second public comment at the end of the meeting because this is our business meeting. I would most certainly delete the entire line saying the purpose of the second public comment is for public to ask clarifying questions. Because I don't think we want to draw that line like Joe was saying. That's my opinion. And I mean, if I had to choose, I would say we are fine with having one public comment period at the beginning of the meeting. If I was to vote to say whether or not I want to have 1 or 2, I would say only 1. Because I feel like that the public can come and they can speak their mind at the beginning of the meeting, and we generally give them as long as they would like. And I also feel like we are not limiting what they can address. There was situations happening in Barnstable right now, and they had to decide whether or not they were going to allow public comment regarding a topic that was not on their agenda.
Wow.
And that's not in our policy at all. You can speak about any topic you possibly want to during public comment period on issues that affect the school district. And so I think that we're not limiting the topics, other than stuff that obviously pertains to us. We don't really need to hear about why the sky is purple today. But if I was to make a choice, I would say we could go back to just one public comment period at the beginning of the meeting. And if we don't go back to one public comment period at the beginning of the meeting, the wording of that first sentence needs to be changed, because it says the public comment period shall generally follow the closing of the meeting. So you need to say, shall generally follow the opening of the meeting and prior to the closing of the meeting, something along that lines. Otherwise, we can have public comment after we close the meeting.
That's true, that's true.
So
That sounds good.
All right,
that's my 2 cents and a correction if my 2 cents aren't heard.
all right, thank you. Sharon?
So it sounds like we need to send this back to committee
Yes,
again.
we absolutely, it is definitely going back to the committee.
Okay.
So Jackie, and then I just have a question, but go ahead,
Yeah,
Jackie.
no, that's fine. I just, I feel like a lot of stuff is great that everyone's bringing to the table because it's an important policy. But one of the things I feel like we keep putting in, taking out, putting in, taking out is this. So, I'm just gonna say, so we're gonna take out the second comment section for the next draft policy.
That is, okay.
So clarification?
Yeah, I'm going to clarify that. Sharon, I see your hand. The only concern I have is we are missing 2 school committee members. I do believe that I believe we have to take a vote on that.
Right,
because
but it would be the first reading again.
Exactly,
So-
yeah.
So now we're gonna
You're
take
right.
it out.
You're right, because
And then we're gonna note that we took it out and then have this conversation again. I just wanna
Right.
clarify that we're planning to take it out based on tonight's meeting. And then on the first reading, we will clarify that we took it out, and then we're gonna have to talk about and it could potentially go back for first reading again.
It could. It's a little tricky because I think based on everything I'm hearing, I think we can agree on a lot of these things.
Yeah.
But that second public comment is contentious, I think. I mean, a little bit maybe. But I do believe based on conversations and thoughts with people, I think we're going to have a very divided vote on that. But go ahead, Nancy.
Just for, I don't know what, just because. If the policy comes back at our next meeting for its first reading, and somebody changes it that night,
Yep.
and we agree on everything else except for one little line, that can be our first reading. And then we can vote on it at our next meeting.
Yep.
Just so that, I mean, there are so many changes that we're talking about
Yes.
tonight
Yeah, they
that
can't.
we can't do that.
Exactly.
But if we're talking about one little piece, that can still be changed at the meeting and be our first reading.
That's a good point. All right, so that's a good point, and for everybody, I think they can hear you, but I'll repeat it anyway. So what's being proposed is that we take these changes tonight back to the subcommittee, and I guess we can put in that we're taking out the public comment, I think.
Yeah.
I still think we're going to be divided on that, and it will come back next time for a first reading again, but I think we have to have a vote on that public comment. And then that's going to drive how it goes forward. Does that make sense to Joe and Sharon? Was that clear?
Next week if we only make one.
Okay. All right.
So you're just saying that when we take this back, everybody here, which 2 people it looks like are not here, so they may have other things to say that we're not even hearing about when we come back next time, and that the only thing that we're being directed to look at is the one thing about possibly taking out the second public comment.
Yeah, we have some edits, so we have to take it back to policy subcommittee for the edits that we've all discussed, and I think there is consensus on some of the things shared tonight. The only thing that we're not in consensus about is removing the second public comment. So I do believe that we'll clean it up based on what we've talked about tonight, and I think we're going to have a vote on this on the 22nd. I'm sorry? Yeah, not on the policy, but whether or not we want a second public comment, and we do have to have all of our members for that vote. Yes, Jackie?
When we added second comment, public comment to our agenda, it was not in reference to the policy. We didn't have this policy. So we as
Correct.
a committee voted to add that second comment. That being said, we could have a draft policy that has one public comment in it, just hypothetical,
Yep.
and then have that go through, hopefully with all the edits, everything's good, and at another date, could vote on adding a second public comment to our agenda, separate from the actual policy.
Okay.
And it would be, I don't know if it would be an amendment to the policy, or it would just be for this year, for 2021, we are voting to add second comment, public comment to the agenda. And that way, we don't keep getting jammed up on the
Right.
policy, because there's so much more to the policy than that one piece.
Exactly, I agree with you.
So maybe that's another way to look at it.
Okay, Joanne?
I think last year when we did vote on it, we said we would look at it
Yeah,
after the year ended and see
Yes.
whether or not it
so we
was
should review it.
good, yeah. So that
Yeah.
would make sense that you'd come back and look at
So
it.
just in the sense of moving the policy through, if
Yep.
everything else is good,
Yep,
we can always add,
yeah,
harder to take away.
that's true.
Just like we were talking about the amount of time you talk, so.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yep.
And
On
To
Nancy?
kind of piggyback on what Jackie said, you could just state there will be a public comment period. That's it. You don't have to say there will be
Oh, that's a
only
good
one
idea.
public comment period. They're not saying there will be 2. You could just say there will be a public comment period. It is generally at the beginning of the meeting. That's it.
Okay,
Because that way you're not saying there definitely won't be 2 and there definitely won't be 5, but there will definitely be a public comment period. Just
Okay.
to piggyback on what she was saying.
okay.
Public comment shall be for a period of
Um,
15 minutes, period.
Sharon?
Okay, so I don't agree with making it not clear, because I think that when people come, they need to know what, I mean, some people just show up at these meetings on the rare events when we have people, that they only decide when they sit down that they have a comment to make, and of course, then it's very rare that they're able to say anything at all at the beginning, because that public comment happens before we do any of our business. So it's only if they're upset about something, or they want us to consider something that hasn't been brought up, or if they've done due diligence, which is almost unheard of. If for some reason somebody has looked up what the agenda is and they've got some issue. But I don't agree with just putting on that sometime we'll have our public comment, because they can't prepare. Are they going to do it at the beginning? Do they need to be there at the beginning? Have a babysitter early? Or, you know, is it going to be at the end of the night, so they need to get somebody for longer? I don't know. I just think it's not considerate to the public if we don't make it very clear what we're doing one way or the other.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Jackie?
Hi, Sharon. Point of clarification for you. We're talking about the policy that there would be a public comment shall be for a period of 15 minutes, period. The agenda would tell the public or whomever is speaking when public comment is, nothing's changing there. You would still know when public comment is in our agenda. Our agenda format is a format. So public comment would always be at the same time on our agenda. So that would clarify and I think answer what your concern was. So that would still stay the same. What we're saying is, in the policy, to just provide that there is an opportunity for public comment. And not specify where and when. Not to be, just so that we don't get wrapped up in this detail
right.
as much.
Yeah,
But it will be on the agenda, so people will know in advance.
Yeah, and I think, Sharon, just for the purpose of moving the policy forward, I think that's a good idea. And that way, it's at the discretion of the chair from year to year as they're putting the agenda together to determine where they drop that. But having said all that, I do believe we will have to have a hard vote next meeting, so we'll put it on the agenda, about the public comment, one or two. I think we have to have that vote, and what? Oh, yes, Jackie?
Well, I was going to say, I don't think you need to do that until we get this policy done.
Right, but on the next,
One and one are the same, you don't want to
Okay.
mix that, so you want to wait until we get the policy done. I think that's what we're trying to emphasize, that.
right.
We don't want that one thing to dictate moving this policy
No,
through.
exactly, and I wasn't
And we
clear.
don't
Yeah,
want-
it's separate.
Right, and we
Yeah.
don't want
Right.
that public comment piece to,
Yes,
we want it to be addressed separately as its own
yes,
important
yes,
issue.
and I wasn't clear in my statement.
So it
You were
needs to
exactly
probably
right.
be,
Yes,
do this,
Right.
and then, at a later date, we as a committee decide
on the public comment.
on the
Yes.
agenda, where we want it on the agenda and
Yes.
how many times or whatever.
Yes, you are correct. You are correct, but we definitely have to have a vote on that second
Yes,
public comment.
yes.
Nancy?
I'm just going to say yes to exactly what Jackie was saying. As long as, the agenda format is going to stay the same until we have a further discussion to change it. And I don't think that precludes the policy if you kind of jiggy that word around so that it's,
Right.
just mentions a generic public comment.
Right.
But we don't want to, yes, exactly what Jackie said.
Yeah. Yes, all right, so anyway, to move this along, another great discussion, but we will take this back to the policy subcommittee, and just for clarification, we are going to put in that school committee will provide a general public comment. We'll figure it out, so that it doesn't tie us to the beginning or the end, and that way it leaves it open down the road for a chair at his or her discretion of where to place it. Okay. I hope we've got all that clarified. So now let's move on. We're going to move on to the next item, which is the superintendent's report.
All right, every minute matters, apparently. First of all, I think, I just want to acknowledge that, we, I think as a school district, have done a great job of launching and showing others how in-person learning can happen safely. We also, as you well know, we're the first school district in the state to have a positive student. We're the first school district in the state to quarantine a number of children out of an abundance of caution. We had over 70 that were quarantined for that 14 days. And we can also say we're the first school district in the state to have everybody back. And, so we've had everybody back for the past week, and knock on wood that, we keep this going. So it's scary. We're a tenth of the way into the school year, and we're doing it. And, so I was walking through Harwich Elementary School just yesterday, and a couple staff members came up to me, and there was I think misplaced praise. They were thanking me for everything I'd done to make sure that we had students back in our buildings, and I was just sharing with them that it's not me that should be thanked, it's our teachers. And I really think we should just pause for a moment and just acknowledge what our teachers are doing that is substantively different than what's happening elsewhere, elsewhere around us. I was at the soccer game just prior to this, and there are people coming up and just saying, hey, everybody that works with me is just, just jealous that our kids go to Monomoy and that you're in person. And so if we look further out on the Cape, Provincetown, I think is now probably closest to us, in that their children, which are middle school and below, they don't have a high school there, but their middle school and elementary kids are now experiencing full day, full year, but they took a couple weeks to go and get that launched. Nauset has the elementary kids are full day, full week programs, but their middle school is on a cohort hybrid schedule where you go 2 days a week, and the other half of the kids go 2 days a week, and the middle school is closed on Wednesdays for deep cleaning, and then the high school kids, as we know, are all remote. If we get a little closer here, Lighthouse is that same sort of 2 cohorts of kids, with Wednesday closed for the proverbial deep clean, and Dennis Yarmouth, the high school has that same 2 days a week, closed closed on Wednesdays, so the kids are getting only 2 days, compared to our high school where our kids are in the buildings. There's one out of 3 days they're not in, but they're present in those classes. We're moving the curriculum forward 5 days a week, with the kids in the building as much as we can get them in. And then, Barnstable is in the, they're starting next Tuesday. We'll have the elementary kids coming in finally for full day. The high school and their middle schools will be sort of operating on that cohort model with that with the closure on Wednesday. But it's our teachers deserve some huge credit and kudos for what they're managing to do. And it's just so refreshing to see kids in the buildings and to see just see the learning that's happening. And I think just some other credit. I thought the report that Mark gave you in writing, I think is very well done. I really appreciate the pictures that Joy has sort of put in there that just shows what's happening. There's the joy and excitement that's happening in classrooms despite the social distancing, and masks. And and the reason that we we don't have that close on Wednesday is, our custodial crew's doing a great job. We deep clean every day and, go in and, wipe down surfaces and, fog spaces. And I even had, Jen Police was commenting, she's like, it's even more than deep cleaning because, part of the plan is to develop habits of minds with the kids. So, there's this force of nature cleaning spray that's available in every classroom, and she's like all of the desks are getting cleaned by the kids 4 times, because every time they come in the room they clean off their space. And so the buildings are immaculate. There's something about the sort of less density in the classrooms and social distancing and everything, but there is practically little to no referrals to any offices, so I think, Mary was saying that she's only seen 3 children have come up to, to her office, and very similar here at the high school, that, that we're, that it's going really well. I don't want to jinx myself. It's like, so knock on wood, I don't get any phone calls from, from nurses in the next few days. That's it for me.
Thank you very much. Yes. Yeah, let's round of applause for all of ours. Yeah. Really job well done. All right, so we're moving on to action items now, and declaration of surplus. Could I have?
Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
I move to declare surplus as presented in our packets from the receiving custodians took it. Receiving.
All right.
It says receiving. I'm assuming the high school.
All right, we good? And could I have a second, please? All right, so Joanne seconded, Nancy made the motion. Any discussion? All right, roll call vote for declaration of surplus. Sharon, we'll start with you.
Aye.
Joe?
Joe Osceola, aye.
Thank you. Jackie?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Joanne? And I'm an aye. So that's unanimous. And the presentation of warrants has made its way around the room. And now we move into our second public comment period. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes, additional time at the discretion of the chair. That is the current agenda item. And anyone from the public would like to speak? All right, Charles, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Charles Bruska, 6 Tibury Ave, Harwich. I'd like to start by thanking you, Madam Chair, for your responsiveness to my clarifying questions about an item on this evening's agenda that you got back to me on this afternoon. I feel like I'm speaking as counsel for the public. So I have some comments about public comment period. As I envision public comment period and 2 public comment periods, and as you know, I was a strong advocate for a second public comment period at school committee meetings, and want to review some of the rationale. So I see a first public comment period, since it happens at the beginning of the meeting, is if a member has really if a member of the community has really studied the agenda and has something of interest on the agenda and wants their thoughts known on that particular item, then that would take place at the beginning of the meeting. At the second public comment is an opportunity for the public, having heard the deliberations, the discussions, all that took place, having sat through the meeting, it's an opportunity for them to share any observations they may have, an opportunity for the community to hear face-to-face opinions of the public, often possibly that a member of the public has information about an item on the agenda that's being carried over for further review, further discussion, and that person might have information or experience related to that area, not in the purview of anyone at the table, and perhaps not even in the purview of the administration, because it may come from other experience outside of the district. And so it's an opportunity to help the committee in that way. It's also an opportunity for the public to clarify and make sure that they understand what was discussed, what was passed, and walk away as we talked at as you talked at the last meeting about with a clear understanding. So I didn't get an answer to one of the 3 questions that I had asked, clarifying questions. And it looked like from the way that the policy that was presented tonight was written was that there was no place for clarifying questions in the first public comment. And that's why I put my questions in writing to you as soon as I could. The difficulty, Madam Chair, was that the public doesn't get to see the agenda till a day or 2 before the meeting. The public, if they wish to see any of the attachments and documents that are going to be part of the agenda, they have very little time to study that. And so I had a first opportunity to study the agenda and the attachments last evening, before and after the debates. And then today I had a full day of appointments inland and very limited in time to get back or to ask questions before the meeting. But I felt I was testing out the suggestions of the new policy, and if clarifying comments about the agenda would only take place through the chair or the superintendent before the meeting, I was trying to get clarification of, is there a place in the first public hearing for clarification, because I had questions about items on the agenda which related to the policy on school committee meetings, as well as the report that I thought was going to be discussed this evening and presented on the screening on the strategic plan, which I served on the steering committee. If the committee doesn't want to hear the opinions, doesn't want to hear the comments face-to-face in a 3-minute segment at a meeting, that's your discretion. That's certainly your total purview to do. As I've said to you before, we know that 93% of the experts tell 93% of a message is tone of voice and body language. The best way to ever receive a message is in person, face-to-face, and that's what I always counsel people as a school administrator and my staff. The best way you communicate with people is face-to-face if you can. That's because in any other format, it's hard to determine the emotional status, the sincerity, the genuineness of the speaker and what's coming through, and very easy to misinterpret, particularly things that get down to just the email level. So it looks like the committee is heading towards, if you really want to share something with the committee, do it in an email. Sit down with an email instead of having 3 minutes or 5 minutes to get to the point. You may have experienced the 4- and 5-page emails explaining in a particular area of someone's thoughts on a matter, and I think you know what I'm referring to in that case. But I would think that the ideal way that you would want, if you could, to hear from the public would be face-to-face. I almost feel like if you eliminate and reduce the public comments to the kind of suggestions and recommendations this evening, I find that those words, the committee would like the opportunity to hear public comments, sound hollow to me. The committee desires individuals to attend its meetings so they may become better acquainted with the operations and programs of our local schools. If you want to come to the meeting and sit through a lengthy meeting instead of doing anything else on a meeting night and can't ask clarifying questions to make sure that you're understanding what the committee is doing, then you're really not thoroughly understanding the operations and programs of the local schools. So I feel the need to share those thoughts. I don't know if I'm the only member of the public in Harwich and Chatham in the school community who think this way. I'd like to believe I feel like I'm taking the role of spokesperson for the public with regard to this, and that's why this is an important matter to me, and that's why I appreciate your continuing reflection on the thoughts and inputs provided in that direction. It's really sincerely meant for the good of the committee to be as responsive a committee to the public whose support you should cherish And the way to get the public support is to be as transparent as possible, and to connect in any and every way that you can with the public. And my thoughts were that the committee had moved in a great direction with having 2 public comment periods. I was thrilled to see getting clarifying questions allowed into the policy and the wording that came forward tonight, but a lot of that could be undermined or thrown by the wayside by some of the recommendations tonight. Fully understanding where those recommendations are coming from, fully respecting that you are the school committee, and it is your meeting. Thank you again for providing the time for those comments to be made on that matter.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, anyone else in the public? All right, seeing none, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn, please.
So,
All right,
second.
Nancy moved, and a second was Jackie?
She moved.
Jackie
I
moved,
second.
Nancy seconded. Roll call vote. Sharon?
Aye.
Joe?
Joe Osceola, aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Joanne? And I'm an aye. All right, meeting is adjourned at 9:02 PM, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Thank you so much.